Hey, this is Trav here, and this podcast relies on the good people who help support this podcast on Patreon, and I'd like to give a big thank you to Bill, Bree, Brendan, Grant, Lisa, Mog, Dan, and Paula. Thank you so much, and here's the show. Hey, welcome to episode 186 of Tales from the Mind Boat, the slow-moving Willy Wonka-esque boat ride down the strange, narrow tunnels of my mind. This is Trav Nash speaking, and thank you very much for listening to this episode. I really do appreciate it. And today's show is all about moving out, moving on, moving away from danger. It's a good show. It's recent and current. It's what we're going through right now. So sit back, relax, think about how lucky sometimes we are as we set sail. This has to end, and it's a wonder we haven't already got up and moved on. I guess in some ways, like most people, we feel trapped by our lack of a bottomless income that can pay our way out of any bad situation. But this was never really an option. All we could do was live with it, and it seemed nobody wanted to help us or do their job. Not the real estate agent, not the housing commission, or even the police. Their hands are tied, they say, with faces that cares little and longs to be elsewhere. Meanwhile, something is terribly wrong with the guy downstairs. Something is definitely wrong with the sketchy people who show up after midnight and come in and out of the apartment. Through all the silence of the night, you can hear them mumbling a garbled speech and laughing through the gaps in their unkept teeth. There is no such thing as quiet and peacefulness, and if there is, it's only a matter of time when these strange noises will return. If any time there is silence, it just makes you feel more and more anxious, knowing that at any time the dam will break. There is some kind of sick release when the sound of objects being pelted at the ceiling, which is our floor, or when the walls rumble, or arguments between two people, or when some random woman screamed out for help, and when we call the police, they pretend like everything's normal and nothing changes. Strange random pieces of furniture begin to surround the apartment block. A full gym set magically appeared in our car park at the back. A random air conditioner with its copper stripped out of its insides, left to lie dormant and rust. Random bikes line the walkway, blocking access to people's units. AstroTurf is used like some kind of red carpet to his front door of a unit where God knows what happens at any given moment of the day. It's all become too much. This alone would have been enough of a red flag to pack up the wagon and move on. But we stayed in hopes things could get better. But they don't. There are constant episodes of screaming and yelling and threats to invisible enemies that only this guy downstairs can see. A voice that is full of hate, aggression and malice. There's no reasoning with this. All it does is smog this area in fear that is all-consuming, and you're frozen to think of what to do next. There is nowhere to hide because you are locked in the same building as a wild animal. This is what happens when homeless people are swept off the street like pieces of trash and pushed into government-owned units, and then they wipe their hands of any further responsibility. They leave with a strange sense of self, and doing something good for the community that's half-assed. In theory, it is a good idea. Homelessness is a huge problem in this country. But you can't just pluck someone that has been living a hard and uncertain lifestyle when every day is survival and expect them to instantly become a moral, upstanding member of society just because you're forcing them to assimilate into a block of units where people generally keep to themselves and don't want to bother others. This plan is obviously not working, and there seems to be more and more complaints of people forced to live in this rental property. Many people have already moved that share the same space as people who refuse to get along or have never been taught how, or even have extreme mental issues that hinder their thought process. We have tried to follow their rules of getting something done about this guy's behaviour. We've recorded dates and incidences, and filled in many affidavits like they asked us to, but all these fall on deaf ears. There is no consequences for this guy's antisocial behaviour. For some reason he gets a pass, or nobody knows what to do with him. And every day he just seems to grow bolder, knowing there is absolutely no consequences for any of his actions, and sometimes hostile behaviour. The worst case scenario doesn't seem like an irrational fear anymore, and this is what keeps us up at night. Every slight sound or shout could easily escalate into something terrible and violent, and where can you go when it's right below us? We just want to live in peace. We're the kinds of people who keep to ourselves and really try to avoid problems with others. We are overly anxious of our actions at the best of times, and living here is a tight clamp on our heart and lungs that disrupt the simple act of breathing. We can't sleep a solid sound sleep, for the night time is when strange meetings of shady people begin. Trash gets unloaded, clinking of bottles. Cars drive up the curb and shine high beams into our window, where white light cracks through the blinds and paint our walls in white horizontal stripes. There is no self-awareness of others. There is no consideration that anybody else exists outside of their tiny little group that has oddly come together. It makes me wonder how any of them have survived this long. They don't seem well, mentally or physically, and basic tasks seem to be something that is taxing and draining for an already clouded brain. You would think there would be an end, or at least a compromise, but there isn't. Even if they do somehow manage to move these people out and put someone else in, it's a safe bet that someone equally bad or worse will move in and the cycle will continue. This no longer feels like home. It feels like a place that has been taken over by an unstable mind. It feels like a castle that has been overrun by the enemy. It feels unsafe. It feels dangerous to leave the house and come home to weird people who try desperately to not look suspect, but doing so makes them look more suspect. Every story has to come to some sort of end, or at least an end to another chapter. We have prolonged it for as long as we can. We've lived here for 11 years, and it always seems to be someone unstable moving in and out of that downstairs apartment. There is no more best case scenarios. It can only get worse. It can only get more dangerous, and this is no way to live when you no longer feel safe anymore. Friday afternoon, I walked down the stairwell of our apartment, only to see my partner Tessa's bike dumped on the ground. I sent her a Facebook message and asked her if her bike is normally chained up under the stairwell, and she instantly replied it should be, and it was only then I looked under the stairwell and found random pieces of scrap metal, more bikes, random boxes of tools, a hard hat and various other industrial items. I also noticed bolt cutters and the bike lock that was once keeping Tessa's bike safe, now broken and laying on the ground. I took photos of everything with my phone and then picked up Tessa's bike that seemed undamaged and brought it back inside our apartment. The whole thing is completely random and illogical, and the only explanation I can come up with is that he wanted to claim that area as his own, like an overly protective magpie. He broke the bike lock to move Tessa's bike out the way so he can hoard more trash, and the idea was pretty much proven to be true, as the next day his bikes were all stacked against the wall where Tessa's bike used to be, followed by more assorted pieces of garbage and broken furniture was now piled up against the wall and under the stairs. It may seem like a little thing, and obviously the bike wasn't stolen, but this was really the last straw. It made us feel sick and violated that we can't even keep our own property in a shared common area without this guy going out of his way to damage and discard someone else's bike just to achieve a stupid goal. This is the kind of person we live with, someone who has no understanding of right and wrong, feels nothing for anyone else, and has somehow convinced himself that he runs things now. And he can do pretty much what he wants, because let's face it, he really can, because nobody wants to deal with this guy. We are powerless to do anything. We tried to make a statement to the police, but without evidence or anything really stolen, there was little that they can do. There was no response from the so-called organisation that is set up to look after their tenants they place into these apartments. It was suddenly becoming far too clear that this will never stop. No one is going to do anything about it, and it's just not safe to live here anymore. For the first time, moving was something that wasn't just brought up as an idea, that we all knew wasn't something we wanted to do, but now becomes our only available option. Time is to take action, and now things quickly fell into furious drive, and to move forward and away from this danger, as we gain momentum with every passing hour. But of course, with every change, there are realities that you have to work within and deal with. It's all well and good to announce it's time to move, but like everything, it takes money, and it takes planning, and it takes a lot of luck and perfect timing. Luckily, some of these we stumbled upon in our favour for a change. Our first problem was our housemate that has been living with us since we moved in, has now decided to move to Queensland for warmer climates, work and independence. It also turned out our 12-month lease has come to an end, and we haven't signed a new one since we didn't know what our housemate's plan was at the time. So at this moment we are lucky not to be locked into a lease that will keep us here for another year. One of our biggest problems is I don't work and have a constant income, and basically rely on my partner to keep us going. Also, the Patreon money from this podcast helps with the utility bills, and the occasional time I sell my art also seems to save the day when we need it the most. But moving is expensive. We would like to stay in the suburb we're already in, because basically it's the nicest place we've ever lived. And I don't think we've had better choices of coffee in my entire life. We are willing to make sacrifices to live somewhere a little out of the city to keep our rent affordable. But if we're lucky enough to find a great place nearby, then that would be the ultimate goal, and would be just perfect. The second problem is our bond. Living here in this apartment for 10 years has certainly been through a lot without much of it being maintained. And this is a worry for us, as it's more than likely we won't get our original bond back. I could imagine this is going to be an extra strain of my partner to have to empty her bank account, and the fact that moving within the next month is now a necessity for our sanity and peace of mind, at the very least. I threw out the idea that maybe we should set up a GoFundMe, which I meant ironically, as I really don't think we knew enough people who would even consider our situation their problem that they could finance. Little did I know the kind and generous people that are really around us. I felt like this was some kind of miraculous event that felt almost unreal and surreal. And it's strange to feel this way because this should be the norm. Helping friends out should be what community is all about. But I can't help but feel pre-programmed to feel bad about accepting money for nothing. Under 24 hours of starting the GoFundMe, we reached our goal for the bond to secure the apartment and above. We instantly felt completely overwhelmed by the generosity of so many friends and family. The amount of friends who retweeted our calls and got the word out there was amazing. Kind words from kind, wonderful, big hearts. I don't know why I forget how many good people are still out there, still doing what they can to help others. And I hope one day we can give back to everyone with interest and just as much kindness. Things strangely fell into place at the right time for a change. Sometimes all the elements line up, and the impossible is somehow possible for reasons that will never be explained. I still feel conflicted though, with a sense of guilt that maybe we don't deserve the good things, and all of this is happening as some kind of cosmic joke for it to be taken away when we think things are never going to change again. It's hard to tell yourself that you are not cursed, and even harder to convince yourself that you're allowed to have good things and kind people around you who care enough about you to help you out of your dark hole that is now growing wider and growing teeth. A conflicting feeling that you shouldn't get too comfortable, and nothing good ever lasts, is where all signs point to, and it's a feeling that I find very hard to discard. I realise now that what we're facing now is a big change, and this is always terrifying, to leave the familiar, to take a chance for a better life. But this no longer feels like home. It's a prison sentence. It's been slowly gaslit by a person who has no understanding or care that anyone else exists other than himself. And there are too many people like him already. It's hard to escape it, but at least we can find our own little box somewhere where we can close the door behind us and just feel safe and relaxed. I can't remember the last time we really felt like this. And finally, there is a lit exit sign. It has always been there, but we never thought we'd have to use, and was only there in case of an emergency. And I can't think of a better time to use it than right now. As of now, the writing of this episode, we've just found out that we've been approved for a new apartment that is basically down the street. A place I've walked past many times. It has a large enclosed fence and a key code to keep the unwanted out in the common area. It's larger than this apartment and has more space, and has an excellent view of the surrounding suburb. Hopefully by early November we should be ready to move in, and we can finally leave this place and the bad vibes behind. We'll be able to sleep at night. We'll be able to keep our stuff safe and secure enough to not have to worry if it's going to be damaged or stolen as soon as our back is turned. No longer paranoid of violence and raw aggression that is triggered for no apparent reason. The squawking of random sketchy individuals that look like their choice of clothes is as unkept as their lives. A place where our cats can chill out and not be just as on edge as we seem to be all the time. A place that we can call home. That feels like a home, that gives us a break from the world, especially in these confusing and troubled times. This was all made possible by the kindness of a lot of people who really care about us, who unselfishly gave what they can to help us get a second chance at having our own space in the world, and not to be hyper alert 24 hours a day. I can't believe how lucky we are, and hopefully we won't have to deal with this kind of shit anymore. So that's it for another week. Thank you very much for listening to this episode, and I hope things are on a better track than what they are right now. If you like this episode and you like this show, well, there's over 180 episodes right now for you to download free. It doesn't cost you anything, and all I ask is maybe share or retweet on social media, leave a review on Apple Music, or just passing it on, mentioning it to a friend would really help us out, and I'd really appreciate it. You can follow this podcast on Facebook and Twitter just by searching for Tales from the Mindboat podcast, and you can follow me on Twitter at Nashtopia, or check out my art diary on Instagram at Trav Nash Draws Things. The music for this podcast is composed by Tim Witt. You can listen to his music right now on SoundCloud just by searching for Tim Witt Sounds, or you can pick up his albums on Bandcamp, again just by searching for Tim Witt Sounds. This episode was written, produced, read, and all other music during the episode was composed by me, and you're welcome. So that's it for another week. Again, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and thank you again if you're listening in and you helped with the GoFundMe. Like, we are overwhelmed. I really didn't expect. I don't know why, but we are surrounded by great people, and that's amazing. So 3 more weeks of this hellhole. Hopefully we can last, and then we can get the hell out of here. So until then, I hope you're doing well. I hope things are looking up for you. You have a good week. Stay safe, and remember, peace.